Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back, or welcome to another Tactical Review live stream. I'm Blair, joined once again by Elias of the Liberty Review podcast. Elias, welcome and thanks for joining.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And I presume, based on our discussions, that you and yours are all doing well so far in the first full day of, well, it's the first day of statewide stay-at-home order.
Yeah, the county I'm in has been under this for about a week now already. So
this is old hat for you.
Yeah, I'm getting used to it now.
Well, you know, they said to increase social distancing. So I've been using a 30 caliber round like that for social distancing, and I think that it's time social distancing intensifies. Sadly, I don't know why I have any .308 Winchester, because I have nothing to eat this. But I'm not getting rid of it.
You got it.
Well, I did see, we talked earlier, that Classic Firearms has their Setmes back in stock for, I think, $600. Desperately wish I had $600. What you gonna do? We've got...
Well, you might soon.
Well, that's true. That's something we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I think. I see that Brownies for My Fat is here. Brownies, welcome. Duval Farms, glad you guys are here. Well, yeah, all of you guys. So we're going to...
Please stay back 6 feet from your monitor.
Yes, 6 feet from your monitor. Elias and I, we've got this down. We've got about 70 miles between us. So... Honestly, this is really an awesome day and age that we live in, that regular guys like you and I have access to a platform to allow us to do things like this. So
it's one of the few good things about the internet. I'll give credit where it's due, and that is one of the few good things.
That was something last Sunday. It was really surreal knowing that my pastor was in a basically empty building. He had, obviously, a technician running the live stream. And then actually the family of that technician is very musically inclined, so they did the praise and worship songs, and there were probably 4 or 5 people in the whole building. And I imagine that had to be really weird for all of them. Of course, YouTube did get slammed Sunday, as so many churches were taking to streaming.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
As a matter of fact, if we have any buffering issues tonight, I am willing to put it up to the fact that there are still lots of churches nationwide who do Wednesday evening services, and in this period of tribulation and illness, that's what they'll be doing. So,
yeah, it's about 6 o'clock in the West Coast, so.
Right. And I see we've been joined by Aunt Diesel Vision. How you doing, Aunt Diesel? There were a couple of things that I wanted to go over. First, last week we talked about my misbegotten attempt at my mug that didn't work out. So I have changed all of the 2A bullet stuff on the merchandise store. The shirts, right now we've only got t-shirts listed, but they do now have the sleeve printing, American flag on the right sleeve, and 2A, or the Tactical Review logo on the left. And I've redesigned the bullet emblem. I've thickened it up so it should work better should you choose to buy a mug. So if that's something, I realize times are tough. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going to be happening. So, but if it's something that you guys would like to look at, that is once again bit.ly/TR merch, and anything you buy, just a few dollars of that will come to help the channel. So, poor conservative, pain trying to find this. I'm very sorry. If I was smart, I would have copied and pasted the link into my bio on Instagram. I like Instagram better than any other social networking platform so far. But I struggle with the fact that I can't just drop a link into a conversation. And until I have a lot more subscribers or followers, excuse me, I can't do the nifty little like swipe up on the story. So, oh, YouTube having problems, not me. Gotcha. So, real quick, if you're following the channel on social media, that's, we can throw this up here real quick. It's super simple. It is Tactical Review 2019 on Facebook and Instagram. So you can check it out, and sharing some behind the scenes stuff. I'm getting ready to give you guys a sneak peek on something you'll probably be seeing on there tomorrow. But you've noticed that I have mentioned on a couple of occasions doing cardio workouts with a weighted vest. Weighted vest. If you guys are in a position where you have not gotten body armor, obviously that's something that Congress is constantly talking about trying to take away from us. Anyway, ideally, I will always recommend that you get some sort of composite, like polyethylene and ceramic composite. It's a lot lighter and actually better hit rated. That said, something is better than nothing, and companies like AR 500 Armor are an 8 to 10 week order out. So if you're in a position where you feel like you want something as soon as possible, I'm going to give a shout out to BAM, the Body Armor Mega Store. I picked up 2 level 3 plates, AR 500 level 3 plates. They are a single curve shooter's cut on their eBay store for around $102 shipped after taxes. So I hesitate to recommend that, but I'm going to throw that into the bucket of something's better than nothing. And I suppose that if it fails for an A-zone shot, I won't have long to regret it. So anyway, 2AEDU.
Hey.
Welcome. It's been a couple weeks since you've been able to join a stream, or been able to join a stream and actually say anything in chat. So thanks for joining, brother. And have fun working on your lawnmower, maybe. I know sometimes turning wrenches can be enjoyable, and sometimes it's just frustrating. So
I know sometimes the frustration is part of the enjoyment, though.
I see, when I've got a project like that going on, I really enjoy it up till the point that I have to get it done, if that makes sense. If it can always stay on a non-critical basis, or things. So last weekend, weekend before last, there we go. I had to replace a garbage disposal and a kitchen sink basin, or kitchen sink faucet. Didn't hate it, but we had been using the sprayer because the neck broke off the kitchen sink. We'd been using just the sprayer for a while, so there wasn't a lot of like, I've got to get this done, and without any pressure, I really enjoyed it. So 2A says, Governor says can't work, getting equipment ready anyways. Yeah, it's a good time to do things such as that. I'm blessed that I've been labeled as non-essential, but our school district is taking care of us. It's really awesome. I really feel for folks who can't, and the states need to hopefully can step up and do the right thing with like unemployment insurance and things. It's crazy. These are unprecedented times. I still have students and athletes who are reaching out to me and asking me, what's going on, and do you know? And it's just so unprecedented. It's really crazy. So, speaking of projects, and I'm trying to figure out some content to put up on the channel that doesn't involve depleting my already thin ammo reserves that can't currently be replenished because we have some well, there was a 300% increase in NICS requests across the last few weeks. So we've got a lot of people. A lot of these are, I think, kind of the average nationwide has been something like 80% new firearms owners. So, yeah, number one, guys, if you are a veteran firearms owner, make sure that you are reaching out to your friends and family who are first-time owners. Make sure that you are helping them out with at least the 4 rules of firearm safety. You know, the last thing we need is for somebody to hurt or kill themselves or an innocent person with a panic buy firearm. We all know that will be politically used. Anyway, so, all right, guys, I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble because the streaming rules say that toy blasters like Nerf blasters are okay. So fingers crossed, but we know that right now, YouTube is using a lot more automated moderation. So fingers crossed. But this is something that you guys are going to be seeing on social media. We're going to make sure this orange tip, it's absolutely a toy. But something, teaser here, firearm related. I don't know. What do you guys think of? Shout out in the chat. What do you guys think of that paint job? We might have to find a real blaster to put that on.
Hang on, YouTube. I have other Nerf guns. Hang on. Nerf.
It's Nerf or nothing. Oh. 2A might be a veteran owner. 2A, you have arsenals that or you have an arsenal that puts a lot of National Guard armories to shame. Okay. Well, poor conservative, very camo. Yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out. There's a couple of tweaks I'd like to do on it. Kind of use it's related to the laundry net method. And I've always had mixed results on that because of the way that the overspray works. So here's hoping that when I put it to real steel and polymer, or steel, aluminum, and polymer, that it works right. So A-dubs, welcome to the stream. Brownie's sweet Call of Duty skin. Hopefully we don't start playing real life Call of Duty. And all right.
Or the game, either one.
Yeah. Okie doke. So let's actually, while we're gonna just kind of scramble around our named subjects, and because we've talked a little bit about stimulus and lack of work, and so we touched on this last week. Elias and I did. And kind of overall conclusion is, as long as this is a one-time or a temporary measure, I mean, this is absolutely an atypical situation. So an atypical response is in order, logically speaking. Mm-hmm. We have folks like 2AEDU, whose his career has been deemed non-essential, and he's a small business owner. So, potentially he's in dire straits. So I think that the conclusion that we nearly closed with last week was, as long as a stimulus is a temporary measure, once or I can see, emergency unemployment insurance. I mean, right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Which they did do some stuff with unemployment, but we'll get that in a second.
Right. As long as it's not a situation leading to where the government is trying to complete or to create a welfare state.
Right.
So we have seen the Republicans had put forth a stimulus package. and I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head, which was shot down by House Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Democrats put forth a stimulus bill, and I don't know. I think that they both missed the mark. And now they're saying things like, well, we've got to take some good with the bad. Okay. I get that.
Right,
That's life.
Yeah, the Democrats were trying to definitely push for some environmental stuff, and whether or not you agree with them or you don't, because there was some stuff going on both sides that, on an ideological level, I agree with, the thought pattern, but I don't agree that it should have been in those bills, and that's kind of what was happening. Now, the good news is today they did strike a deal. They're done. In fact, the only thing that's really left now is that Speaker of the House, Pelosi, is trying to see if she can get a unanimous vote so that she doesn't have to try to recall everybody to Washington, some of which are in quarantine right now, to do a vote on this. If she can get everybody, and the majority and the minority leaders are both working the parties to say, look, let's just get this done.
Right.
Let's do a unanimous vote. Let's just agree. There's things we like, there's things we don't like, but it's what's needed overall. So
yeah.
And that's kind of where it's sitting now. And it looks like it's going to pass. It's just a question of whether or not they can get a unanimous vote.
Of course, I sit here, we have extra layers of complexity because we're using Skype currently, and then we're streaming that to YouTube. And we are managing to accomplish that with relatively little, actually now no problem, and I'll touch back to that here in just a minute. I was the problem, I will confess that. But so even for those who can't be there in person, what's wrong with a video conference?
The problem they're having is that they don't have that infrastructure in there right now to do it. And there's some constitutional questions. I was reading about it earlier. There are some constitutional questions behind voting remotely and using video conferencing, and there's legal issues behind it. So, and at least I will give them credit there that they are not just trying to circumvent everything. They're not throwing everything out just because it's an emergency. They are trying to abide by what the law says, what the Constitution. So, real quick, poor conservative. They've announced they struck a deal. Both the Democrats and the Republicans and the White House, the Senate, the House, all the majority minority leaders have agreed. Whether or not, I don't know where the whip is at this point, but where the whip counts are. But from the understanding that they're giving is that the votes are there. It's just, is anybody going to try to challenge it at this point? Right, yeah, you can't vote outside the confines of the Capitol, and until they address that issue, there's nothing they can do about it.
Gotcha.
So, from what I understand, if there is a unanimous vote, if nobody dissents against it, then they can go ahead and just call it a unanimous vote. But if even one congressman says no, that's it. They have to do a full vote on it. Gotcha. So, that's kind of where they're sitting at, and it's really going to depend on how the majority and the minority leaders address it and whether or not they can get everybody on each side to line up to it.
Gotcha. Okay, Duval Farms have...
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, poor conservative, but they actually have announced that it's done.
Gotcha.
This isn't just everything else has been we think. Today they finally said, we've got it. We have it, everybody. So, we'll see. Now, again, somebody can dissent.
Right.
And you don't know until it's the actual vote, but as of right now, what's happened so far is they haven't actually voted on anything because Democrats were blocking it in the Senate from getting the required votes to move it to a full vote. And in the House, they've just been kind of complaining.
Right.
And trying to draft up their own thing. Now, both sides have said, okay, we're good with at least the people who really are the ones that are going to push the parties on both sides have said they're good with it. So the top minority leaders have agreed to it on both sides.
Yeah.
Which is usually your biggest hurdle.
And to be very honest, from the little bits that we were able to see as the general public off of the previously proffered bills, I agree with a lot of the problems that were had. If we look back to the recession in 2008, or when they did that stimulus, and we had the bailout of automotive manufacturers and things like that, there were no protections put in place for the employees. And then we saw things like we saw C-suite executives still get like six-figure bonuses after they've laid off a bunch of workforce, and with and so I don't have any problem. Look, I get it. Sometimes loans have to be taken, etc., etc. But if you've had to do that, it's time to cinch down. Yeah, especially if you've already got a 6 or 7 figure salary. Pretty sure you could do without that extra $200,000 bonus. Anyway, I saw over here in the chat, Devolve Farms said struggling to find ammunition. You're not alone. Actually, I was talking to Elias before we even started up the video chat. I'm not sure. I found, well, for one thing, follow Mr. Guns and Gear, either on Instagram or on Facebook. Mike is, number one, a really stand-up dude. Number two, as an FFL, he has access to like distributor level shipping lists. So he kind of, he knows when something's going out, and he gets a little bit of advance notice, and he's always sharing the cheapest prices he's finding, whether it's at 223, 556, 9mm, just whatever he's finding, he's putting that out there. And unfortunately, it's just all selling out usually within single-digit minute counts. So the other day, he posted a link to Cabela's was selling some brass 9mm for around 18 cents a round, which is pretty close to typical for brass. And I have a 9mm that I need to get some rounds through and just function check it. And so I ordered 300 rounds, and I don't know if that order is canceled or if it's back ordered, or because, well, Cabela's, quite frankly, their system, actually a lot of retailers, their systems just aren't set up to handle this kind of
Right.
traffic that they're seeing. Anyway,
Right.
So follow Mr. Guns and Gear. Also, obviously I can't drop a link or anything. Search for Anatolian Arms. Anatolian Arms is they are from Missouri, I think, and they're a member in one of the Discord channels that I'm a part of. So maybe reach out to them through the contact, say that Tactical Review sent you, and see if they can get you some of their house branded ammunition for whatever you've got. So as long as it's centerfire, I don't know that Anatolian Arms does like shotgun stuff. So hopefully that helps some of you guys. I know that the struggle is real. Elias, I know that you placed an ammo order and most of your ammo's come in.
Most of it's in there. We're still waiting on some.
Anyway, Brownies is saying that in New Mexico, centerfire cartridges are gone. Rimfire is still available. Now, I realize that we are under stay-at-home, but Devolve Farms, I do know that you are an Indiana company, and in the state of Indiana, the governor did declare firearms or gun shops and things like that are one of the essential businesses, and also farm stores. So you might even be able to give a call to your local Rural King or Big R. I know my local Big R has been bought out by Stock and Field. I don't know if that's company-wide. Anyway, you might give a call to your local farm store and ask them if they've got anything on shelf. Brownies was mentioning that rimfire stuff is still available. I think there will be a run on that as well. So I can tell you guys what has been traditional, regular, or normal prices for the calibers that I use, for the last year or so. I don't think that will be the norm again for, I hate to say this, a minimum of 8 and maybe as much as 18 months. I think that we are going to be seeing some ammunition scarcity and some increased prices. So,
Really, how long does this last?
well,
Because the longer this lasts, we're not seeing a slowdown in the panic buying. Whether you're talking about food and groceries or you're talking about ammo and guns, you're not seeing a slowdown right now. I went to Meijer yesterday morning, and it was still, even after being closed all night and them restocking as much as they can, you still have entire aisles empty.
I think one thing that is starting to help now, there's an asterisk to that, because it doesn't help families like mine. I have a big family. But it's starting to help that items that are that have been getting hit with scarcity, a lot of stores are starting to put limits on them. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that's like 1 gallon of milk. Well, in a family of 6, 1 gallon of milk doesn't last very long. It might be 2 gallons. So actually, I kind of want to, it's funny because what I found out is that my typical lifestyle is evidently called self-quarantine because, okay, so last weekend I went out to try to buy groceries for a family of 6. Guys, I went to more stores trying to accomplish that last weekend than I went to when I went Christmas shopping last year. And Christmas shopping included several hours at a mall in a bigger town. It's just, actually, where'd we go? Might have been South Bend this time. It was ridiculous. I made 14 stops across the weekend to get close to, not exactly, but close to a week to 2 weeks worth of groceries for a family of 6. I increased my personal exposure. Keeping in mind, every place I go, every item I touch, I could infect myself. I increased my exposure 700% over a normal grocery store trip. Frankly, it's ridiculous. But then the flip side to that is when you have headlines like the teens in Kentucky who decided to have a coronavirus party.
Right.
So, Elias and I have been saying now for 2 weeks, don't panic.
Yep.
But at least show some freaking concern, okay? It's not a joke either. During lockdown, it's allowed to get out and get some exercise in the state of Indiana, and I think most of the states I've seen, it's very similar. Yeah. Maintain that 6-foot distance. And again, I live out in the middle of nowhere, as you saw this afternoon if you follow the channel on Instagram. So that's easy. That said, very specifically, it says that playgrounds are supposed to be closed. So going to a park is okay. Going to the playground is supposed to be disallowed.
Right.
I live across the street from a playground. I heard the creaking of swing chains all day long because it was a nice day out. And it's people that don't get it. And so actually, Elias shared something with me earlier. And Elias, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to drop the link into chat so you guys can check it out for yourself. And then we're going to put this up on screen here, and hopefully I'm not violating any copyright. So, flip that there, and get that out of the way. All right. So what you're seeing up on screen is this Carrot Health COVID-19 simulation. So,
and Carrot Health is a healthcare data analytics
All right.
company. So pretty much they do data analysis for healthcare companies, healthcare, insurance, that kind of thing. So this is kind of their bread and butter.
All right. The feed died here. I'm going to try to reload the page. Hopefully the world doesn't crouch.
Well, he does that. What this pretty much does is they have taken various data, such as census data and health data, that kind of thing, found the people, put in the numbers of the amount of people who are at risk, where do they live, that kind of thing. And it gives a simulation that at current rates, what we would be looking at for mortality rate. And that's kind of the main one right there. That's based on a 10% infection of the population. And it kind of goes from there. And it lets you mess with the numbers and that kind of thing. But it kind of gives an idea of what this could turn into at the current rate that it's growing.
Right. So, I think one of the main takeaways from this, and again, this goes back to, I still don't want you guys to panic. All right, because panic precludes rational thought. But if you part of the population that's just said, oh, this is just a flu. Guys, in this current or most recent flu season, if I've got the right numbers, and Elias, tell me if I'm wrong because we had talked about this, 35,300 people died from the flu. Is that the number I have?
Correct. I think that's what the CDC's number were for the 2018.
Right. So what we're looking at is a potential right here. Let's see if I can highlight this. It's not going to highlight because of course it's not. So before that died, look, 319,857 projected or simulated mortalities. Guys, that's nearly an order of magnitude difference in the total dead.
Yeah.
Mortality rate for this most recent flu season is 0.09% of the confirmed sick population succumbed to the flu or complications due to having the flu. 0.09%, not even 0.1%. Based on based on current projections, based on the data we have from the Diamond Princess quarantine and infection, we are estimating 1.4% of the sick population with COVID-19 will succumb to the illness in some form or fashion. And just today, we saw the first death of an individual under 18 years of age. So the lowest mortality rate, one of the lowest mortality rates on average. But we had an individual with no underlying conditions succumb to the virus within the last 24 hours. It's, again, panic's not the answer. Wiping out your store's supply of butt wipe isn't going to help you. Buying so many N95 masks that your local emergency room isn't going to have any, that's not going to do everybody any good. But going to coronavirus parties, that's not helping the situation either. So, yeah, I guess I don't entirely know what the takeaway is off of that, because I still don't think that panic is the right answer. But
like I said before, I talked to my wife about this a little bit before, and she's studying in the medical field and that kind of thing, and this is an area that she's really interested in. So she was kind of studying all the numbers and that kind of thing, and her takeaway from the whole thing was, and what she was trying to get me to understand, because I'm hard-headed, is people are going to get sick. We're not going to be able to stop this thing necessarily altogether. The idea is that whole thing of what they've been talking about, they call it flattening the curve, which is don't overwhelm the hospitals. We have a good medical system in the United States. But if you overwhelm the system like what happened in Italy, that's where the deaths are really coming in.
Right.
It's not that Italy doesn't have a good medical system. They are a first world country. They have a decent medical system. But when you only have X amount of beds and you've got X times 5 coming in, where are you going to put them? And, they're at the point in Italy where they're triaging who's going to live, who's going to die. We don't want that coming here. So if by staying away from other people and that kind of thing, we can kind of stretch it out a little bit, we have a little bit more of a fighting chance against this thing.
Right.
People are going to get sick. You can't stop it, but we can slow it down.
Right.
So be smart, but the ones panicking, stop panicking. There's no reason to. All you're doing is creating undue stress in the system.
Right.
All you're doing is now, and panic begets panic. So when people see, we're all out of this, then the next time it's in stock, they end up doing the exact same thing. So it
Absolutely.
kind of keeps going.
Absolutely.
And all you're doing is hurting each other in the long run.
So last weekend, Sunday, I had to go to Walmart. I did most of my grocery. I made my attempts at grocery shopping on Friday afternoon. But Sunday, I had necessity to go to Walmart. So while I was there, I decided I was going to just walk through the grocery section. And they happened to have, I think it was 8 or maybe a dozen 1-pound tubes of 80/20 ground beef. And any kind of meat, I hadn't been able to find anything except corned beef brisket up to that point. Now don't get me wrong, I love a good corned beef brisket. I'm the only person in my house who does. So I didn't bring home any corned beef brisket. But you guys don't understand what kind of internal struggle it was for me to walk out of there with only 4 pounds of ground beef. But the fact of the matter is that once again, panic begets panic.
Right. We are putting and by we, I'm talking about a collective we as a society, we're putting in too much stress on the supply system. But we're the ones causing it. They're not having problems with the supply system because factories shut up or anything like that. It's because we can't.
Right.
When one store wipes out of stuff, okay, fine. In a couple of days they can restock it. When all over the country it's happening, distribution centers and then all the way back down the supply chain have a hard time. So there's no reason to panic. It's not the end of the republic. We're not about to all just completely collapse. That kind of stuff is fine. Think about your neighbors also. Your neighbors need food. You go in there, you take it all, they've got nothing.
Yeah. So it goes like...
For what?
Right.
Nobody's stopping you from going to the grocery store. Every single state that's put in restrictions has said, go to the grocery store, get food. None of that stuff's going to stop.
Right. So...
Could it get affected? Yes.
Right.
But it's not going to stop.
Yeah. That's the thing, okay? Because the distribution centers...
Really, how many of us eat extra Twinkies? So...
The distribution centers also are, working within COVID-19 regulations. As a matter of fact, I saw that one of the Amazon distribution centers had to be taken down temporarily because they've had confirmed cases there. So obviously, right. And you know what? I don't want my stuff coming through a known infected. Right. As a matter of fact, everything I've brought into the house since definitely this week, I don't remember if I was doing it last week, it comes in on the back porch, and I lay everything out, and I hose it all down with a good coat of Lysol. So I might have to...
And that's it.
Right.
I mean, that's it. There's no reason to panic. We don't need to set things on fire when we get them delivered.
I like setting things on fire, but not if I want to keep it. So, now, ammunition... ammunition is a little bit of a different animal. That scarcity is... All right, I don't want any of you guys to go out and panic buy. Don't be that guy who sees 3 cases of something on the shelf and buys all 3 of them. All right. That said, I saw a good price at my local farm store on 22, and I picked up... I don't remember. I picked up 10 boxes of it. The small boxes, like that size. So I guess I picked up 500 rounds of 22 there. And it was funny because I had 5 boxes in my hand, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to buy another 5 boxes. Just kind of going back and forth with myself. And there's another guy who walked into the aisle, and I was like, man, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Now, the thing is, it was on the bottom shelf, and there were probably another 20 boxes at the back. You just couldn't see them standing up. So I snatched up those other 5 boxes real quick, and the guy was like, oh man, I wasn't going after those. And I was like, no, if those were the last 5 boxes, they would have been there when I walked away. It just, I don't know. That's who I am now.
I look at it as, would you have bought it like that outside of this situation? Yeah, because it's on sale. It's a good sale, you're going to buy it.
Right.
Nobody walks out with a truckload of toilet paper no matter how good the sale is.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of funny because I mentioned last week that, and I've mentioned, I think on my personal Facebook page before, with a family of 6, once again, I buy the 80 roll cases of toilet paper from Amazon. And I do that about twice a year, and then I don't worry about it. Number 1, it's cheaper per square. And number 2, I don't have to. Once again, my preferred lifestyle is self-quarantine. I make a lot of Amazon purchases just because But the flip side to that is, if I decide to go to the store, if I go to the closest store that's not a convenience store, I'm guaranteeing myself a 45-minute round trip, not counting the time I spend in the store. So, it's the...
Make it worth it.
It's the corollary to country living.
Right.
Well, anyway, so the other day I counted up, and I'm down to 50 rolls of toilet paper, so it's time to panic buy another semi-truck load, right? So, you guys are being awful quiet in the chat.
I think we're boring them.
Maybe. That could be. Anyway, what's weird is we started that with the whole stimulus thing.
Yeah.
Evidently, it wasn't very stimulating.
It wasn't stimulating. All right, talk about COVID. So the takeaway from all this is, stop panicking, people.
But
just stop. There's no reason to it. You're making things much more difficult for everybody around. And if that's the attitude you want to have, of being greedy, of being selfish, but that's not going to get anyone far in a situation like this. This is one of those situations where you got to work with each other. There's no reason to panic. The system's not collapsing. You still have toilet paper there on Monday. And on the flip side of it is, at the same time, don't treat this like it's nothing.
Right.
When the state says stay home, stay home. I mean, go out and get what you need to, but then go home. This isn't the time to go have parties and things like that. Get through this quickly, and we can go back to life as normal.
Right. Well, I saw something on Facebook, I think it was. It said that the longer that everybody refuses to implement social distancing, the longer we're going to have to. I also saw one of my teacher friends who said, I feel like I'm in a class and we're all losing recess time because people are refusing to follow the rules. So I was like, Now, I will say, I'm very, very glad that all of these stay-at-home orders and all of these light quarantines, if you will, they're coming from the state level and local, like local mayors and things. I would be very indignant for a mass quarantine to be declared at the federal level.
And as I think I kind of touched on last week, it can't be done. There are a lot of people out there calling for, why hasn't Trump ordered a quarantine for the entire country? He can't legally do that. He can't legally, he can't constitutionally. It is not within the power of the federal government to do so. It's not even in the power for Congress to do so. It's not even like one of those things where Congress has to agree to it. It can't be done. It violates, I want to say it's like the Commerce Clause or something like that doesn't allow that. That power is left to the states through the 10th Amendment. And so this is being done exactly how it's meant to be done.
Of course, you say that, but Trump also didn't have legal or constitutional right to outright ban bump stocks either. So,
Well, the legal right, unfortunately, was given to him by Congress. Now, if we want to talk about constitutionality, he didn't. But from a legal, what's the law on the books? Yeah, because of the fact that he runs the ATF, and the ATF was charged with regulating those kind of things.
But
So
the ATF is an
legally, but
unconstitutional.
right. But the constitutionality of it, no. But the fact is, he can't. I think he knew that if he tried, it was going to be ugly.
Right.
And so he's leaving it where it belongs, which is the governor.
So poor conservative, yep, purchases your family needs. Don't worry about anybody else's hoarding or poor planning. And that's, yeah.
Right, and that's the thing is what you need, but you got to have some sense of rationality within it.
Right.
I don't need, 10 pounds of ground beef for the next week. I just don't. So I'm not going to buy that. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It causes more problems. And guess what? If I do that and it becomes a chain effect, then in a week or 2 weeks when I go back to get more, there's not going to be any left.
Right.
And that's what's happening now. These people are starting to realize.
Now, the flip side is when I went to a local Kroger and they had 3-pound bulk packs, limit 3, and they had a whole case full of them, I did buy 3.
Again, that's something you would normally do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, and I'm kicking myself because in years past, I used to go, when I got my tax refund check, because I'm blessed to receive a tax check, I would go and spend like $700 at, it's not local, but it's a well-known area meat market. It's up in Buchanan, Michigan, so a lot of my Michigan guys are going to be familiar with Lowry's. And I'd go spend $700 and get hundreds of pounds worth of meat. And
right, which is a normal thing. A lot
Right.
of people out in the country do that kind of thing.
Right. Now, that said, I did not get that accomplished back in early February. Now's not the time to do that.
Right.
It's fine if any one of you wants to be a prepper, whether it's 6 months or whether you want to go full on doomsday prepper where you can actually have a bunker that you can live out of for years and years.
Yeah.
That's fine, but you don't start that mentality at the beginning.
Right. You do that before.
Right.
That's the whole
Prep.
That's the whole idea of prepping. You're preparing for things to go badly, not things just went badly. Let me go prepare now.
Correct.
It's too late.
Correct.
And preppers, the real preppers, they don't go and buy 6 months worth of food at one time. It's just most preppers will do it over a time period.
Correct.
They're at the store anyway.
Yep.
They've got the Costco or the Sam's membership. Hey, I'm getting me a case of this. I'll grab 2 cases of this. One of them will go up in the pantry. The other one's going to go in storage, kind of thing. So, but anyway, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing. And to your point a minute ago, yes, it is being handled where it's supposed to be handled,
Right.
which is at the state level. That's the state's job. If they want to delegate that down, like what we saw in Indiana for a little while, they can.
So,
But that is within the state's purview.
and I guess to touch back, hey, if you guys live in a more rural area and you have hog farmers, dairy farmers, whatever it is, I guess not dairy, beef farmers. That's a different. It's the same animal. It's a different concept. You might reach out to them and see if they sell direct to the public. Because I know a couple of them in my area do, and I know when they are planning on having another cow back from slaughter, and I'm going to try to buy probably 30 pounds of ground off of that. But again, that's something that I would normally do. It's not just because it's a panic situation. And then that does neat little things like help sustain local businesses.
Right. To that also if you've got small local stores and you got small markets, go talk to them. We went today to where we can't get anything in the stores. Unfortunately, I live in a more metropolitan area. We can't get into anything in the regular stores. However, there's a small market here that exclusively sells Indiana grown produce and meat. And so we went there. It's helping to sustain them. They're in turn helping to sustain the farmers and things like that out there. So, give them a little bit of a hand, help them out a little bit. Everybody's going to be hurting. And these businesses, if they can't make it through this, I guarantee there's going to be several businesses that go through this that are not going to make it out on the other side.
Unfortunately.
They just don't. So, if you can, go for it.
So, Patsy Lindsay, welcome. and was able to get 2 packages of beef at Save-A-Lot. No vegetables though. Yeah. And see, I've heard some sad as in kind of ludicrous, I guess, not necessarily tearjerker, but things like a Walmart associate was saying that they watched somebody fill a cart with bananas. This is like 2 weeks ago, kind of as the panic was starting to set in. Filled a cart with bananas. Why? Those aren't going to keep. I mean,
exactly.
The best you can do, obviously, once a banana starts getting that really dark brown, you can throw it in the freezer and you can make banana bread later if you know to do that. But these are people who didn't have any kind of plan to their hoarding. They just were like, I like this, I'm scared, panic buy.
Right. Yeah, and it's not going to last.
So,
but
yeah. And that's the thing, when you buy fresh, it's healthier, but unfortunately then sustenance on that is, that's kind of that have to go to the grocery store several times a week, which increases your exposure. So, or you use it and you make like soups and things and then you freeze
But
that.
again, if you can find those small markets, you're going to have a lot less people in there at a time.
Right.
So, just saying, I'm a big proponent of shopping local. Yeah, it costs a little bit more, but a lot of times you get a much better quality.
That's true.
So,
and if you can afford it,
you're keeping your community alive.
Right.
Most of these places have been bought out by the big companies. So if you can do it, if you can't, then that's the way life goes. But
right. So how about we get towards something at least more firearms focused? We'll still be having some constitutional conversation, but so ripping through all of your social media feeds, if you follow any kind of pro-gun personalities on social media, you have seen mentioned in the last week or so House Resolution 5717 and newly announced by the ever lovely Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senate Bill 3254. Yeah, these are just... Okay, I'm going to start with, once again, we don't want to panic. Definitely reach out to your representatives and tell them that these are hot garbage. Is it an overstatement, Elias, if one, well, obviously not both of them would pass because they're basically the same thing, but if one of these were to pass, it is, in fact, the end of the Second Amendment?
You're pretty close. You're pretty close because it does a lot of things. It's a pretty far-reaching bill. It is an attempt to definitely curb gun ownership. I mean, it talks about a federal firearms license. The interesting thing I thought about it, though, was that it was a shell issue, which surprised me. But, I mean, it's wanting a license it's pretty much in Illinois, like the FOID cards that Illinois has on a federal level. You're not even allowed to buy ammo. You can't own a gun. You can't buy any ammo for it without a federal card. It adds a whole bunch of taxes on for ammo and things like that. It bans pretty much it bans all the black scary guns, that kind of thing. It'd be pretty bad. Now the good thing I will say is it's not going to get anywhere. I mean, the House won't even pass, and that's a Democrat controlled thing. They tried to pass an assault bill back about 6-7 months ago, and even the Democrats wouldn't sign off on it, saying, yeah, there's no reason for this, it's a waste of our time, because it's going to die. It'll never see the light of day in the Senate. Kind of like Warren's. Warren can only get 3 other senators to co-sponsor it with her because they all know they don't want their names attached to it because they know it's not going to even, the committee probably won't even talk about it, much less ever get out of committee. So that's the good thing. But, on that side thing is, this is the kind of action we need, is to be watching for this kind of stuff because this is how things happen.
Right.
Let's say that you had a Democratic controlled Senate and House right now. This situation that we're in right now would be the prime time for them to try to push something through like this.
Or tack it onto a stimulus bill,
Or try to put it in as a
Right.
rider, yeah. Which the stimulus bill had a whole bunch from a constitutional standpoint and a legal standpoint. The reason that we're, to the point of poor conservative a little bit ago, why we're having problems with them trying to get these things passed was because of all the riders they were trying to put
And
in
that's
there,
both
where it had
sides.
nothing to do with the stimulus. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. And ideologically, there were some things I agreed with, but it wasn't the place. And that was the reason why they couldn't agree with it. It wasn't the idea that, hey, we don't agree that money shouldn't go out. It was, hang on, you guys are adding all these things that have nothing to do with this. So these are the kind of things where you have to watch out. And you got to make sure you keep your congressmen, your senators in check so that bills like that, like the 5717 and 3254, don't ever see the light of day. Because we don't know what's going to happen. Under President Obama, we did have a point where it was a supermajority in the Senate. Nobody could stop them. That's how Obamacare got through, was because nobody could stop them because they had the 60 votes. For those of you who don't know Senate procedure, in order to go to a final vote, they have to have 60 votes to invoke cloture, I think it's called. I can't remember the pronunciation. Right. But that is what gets it to a final bill. So whenever you hear about what's it called? I can't think of the word. Not grandstanding. Filibuster.
Yeah, filibustering.
Filibuster is not allowing the vote to go, that cloture vote to go. So anyway, the Democrats had the 60 votes. Once they had the 60 votes, all they needed was 50 votes for it, or 51 votes for it to pass. It can happen again. We can very easily have a supermajority on either side that will start to push through things. So this is the kind of thing where you have to be very observant. When you see these scroll through, don't pay them no mind and don't necessarily go. And while it's true, you can sit there and say it's never going to pass, and that might be
That's
true.
Dangerous.
That doesn't mean that we don't make sure that our representatives and our senators remember who they represent. And make sure we make sure that they know where their constituents stand, so that things like that don't ever see the light of day.
Well, and
cloture. There you go. Thank you.
And the thing is that all we need to look at to see that is look at what happened in Virginia. It was some of our very first live streams together. And that's where it came from, is, it'll never happen in Virginia. Well, honestly, most of the original 13 colonies are some of the very worst places to live constitutionally. And as a matter of fact, there was a minor victory in Pennsylvania, excuse me, that originally, when they went into a statewide lockdown or stay-at-home order, that firearms stores were labeled as non-essential and were being closed. And there's been enough of an outcry from the public, from people who want to be able to defend themselves, that they were able to get that changed. And here's the one thing, just to touch on that real quick. One thing that frightens me is that after all this blows over, that there's going to be all these new firearm owners who are going to use their status as a gun owner to push common sense gun control. And that will that'll grind my gears. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it. So another thing, though, is you guys want to be watching if your senators or your representatives are the ones who are trying to put all this political nonsense, all these extra riders, all of this, all of that, into a bill when it should be about helping the regular guy. It should be about helping small businesses like 2A EDUs, and they're more worried about pushing their political agenda, their Green New Deal, their abortion funding, their big business stimulus. Okay, it's both sides of the aisle here. That's the important thing. You can't just say, I'm going to vote Republican because they're the good guys. Well, no. Look at what's
in some things.
But if you've got to really look at what an individual's track record is, because number one, we've got the term rhino for a reason. But number two, power seeks after power. We've allowed this country to become an oligarchy, and so they will use tragedies like this to attempt to garner more power for themselves and for the federal government.
Right.
And so if your representative, if your senator is one of the people who was trying that nonsense, remember that come election time. Of course, we're all assuming that we're going to be able to have the elections in November. So, anyway. All right, let me step back down off of the soapbox here.
No, I mean, it's right, and that's our job, and that's what we have not done a good job of in this country, is holding elected officials responsible. Instead, we just complain about it and then re-elect them.
Yeah.
And we don't hold them responsible, and that's one of those things that it's one of my grind my gears moments, is the idea that that's what we do. We sit around, we complain about it, but every 2 years, you know, I've used the term before, we get to overthrow the government, and then we don't do it.
Right.
The entire House of Representatives is up for election every 2 years. Theoretically, every single one of them can be out of a job come January. Every single one of those representatives could be out of a job if the number of people who complained about them actually did something about it.
Well, and that's, I don't know, once again, I really feel like we need to, as the constituents, nationwide, we need to lobby for a constitutional convention, because we need some changes that we know that the legislature as it stands will not enact. We need congressional term limits.
Yes.
Okay,
there's a lot of things
right.
we need. We need congressional term limits. They
need to go back to being a per diem pay. Everybody's like, oh, it's so much bigger of a job now than it was 250 years ago.
That's because they made it
right.
that big. It was job security. You make it that big. If some of our largest states can still only meet in session for a couple months out of the year, then Congress can also. The thing is, Congress wasn't supposed to be doing that much legislation in the first place. They weren't supposed to be getting involved as much as they do. So the excuse of it's a bigger country and that's why we have to, no, it's that they gave themselves job security by constantly creating more and more legislation, and the people didn't hold them to their jobs.
Well, and then, you know, hang on. It went away, guys. It's gone. I had a really poignant point to make, and it's gone. It's late. I don't know where my brain is.
But, you know, we have an election in a few months. You know, and I call on everybody that if you really don't like what your representative's doing and your senator doing, if your senators are up, vote them out. Get rid of them. Toss them to the curb.
Term limits, salary caps.
You owe them nothing. You owe them nothing. They owe you, because that's their job, is to represent. That's one of the biggest problems, is Congress is supposed to represent the people. Your congressman is supposed to do what does the majority of his constituents want. That's what he's supposed to vote. Senators, that's a whole different mess because of the amendments that put them as a popular vote. Initially, senators were actually meant to look at the states as a whole. That was why the Senate, when people complain about things take too long to get to the Senate, as by design. They figure the House of Representatives would do things quickly, and then it would get to the Senate, and the senators' jobs, and that's the reason why, if you ever look at the ages, senators have to be older. Congressmen are 25, senators are 30 for a reason. They wanted more mature people in those roles to look at as a whole. Is this good for the country? Is this good for my state? And is it good for the United States as a whole? And then the president is supposed to be that final authority of, it is something that is good for the country. And that's what it's supposed to be. And now it's completely gone off track. And the only way we're ever going to get back on track is if we actually sent Washington a message.
Right.
Yeah, salary caps. That's another one of the things. Term limits, salary caps. Not being allowed to excuse themselves from legislation, which is what happens a lot of times. Obamacare was a big one, where Congress was exempted from the requirements inside of Obamacare.
However, with term limits, even if they were exempted from legislation, they wouldn't be for long.
No, I don't think they should be exempted
No,
at all.
I agree.
The only exemptions you ever initially saw and that are still in place today is that, and it's at most of the state legislatures also, is that you can't be arrested if you're en route to a legislative session. And that's it. You can be arrested as soon as it's over, but you can't be. That's really the only thing they should be excused from. Other than that, no, they shouldn't be excused from their own legislation. That just gives them incentives.
Right. Well, and then,
that's what a tyrannical government does. It excuses itself from
good for me, but not, or good for thee, but not for me.
I would say the Democrats and the Republicans should be paid on a basis of what they have done for us. I mean, we like to sit here. We do kind of talk so great about Republicans, and by we, I'm talking about gun owners, because for the most part, they are on the side of gun. Let me rephrase that.
Traditionally.
It is beneficial for them. It is beneficial for them to be on the side of gun owners. But if you were to look at, for instance, the stimulus package that they were trying to push through before, there was a lot going to big businesses and big companies, and the Treasury was going to have about $1 trillion that they would not have to account for, that they could give to any company they wanted to, and they would not have to account to Congress for it. That's a problem.
Well, and
it was the Democrats pushing back to make sure that the individual people were getting money to help, kind of offset things. And because of it, it's a $600 increase for the next 4 months on unemployment to help the people who were going to be losing their jobs when businesses shut down. So I know it's kind of the thing of, the Republicans are great, but in all reality, neither of them are for you these days.
Right.
Neither of them are for you. They're for companies. They're for the people with a lot of money. Whether they're Democrats or Republicans, I really don't care. They're both in it for the money. Democrats will tell you they're not, but they really are if you follow the money. What we have to do as a country is remind them that they don't work for the companies, they work for us.
Well, then that's a great point.
You fire all of Congress and you fire a third of the Senate in one election, that sends a message.
So just, Democrats aren't about the money, kind of, and then Republicans are all for the. But let's think about this. From the numbers I've seen, and who knows how accurate they are, but allegedly, Michael Bloomberg spent something in the neighborhood of was it a half a billion?
Yeah. Something like that. It was a ridiculous amount of money.
$500 million, $500 million on a failed presidential bid. A failed Democratic nomination.
Right. It wasn't even a presidential bid. It was a nomination.
So, if in fact the Democrats were for the people, I want you guys to stop and think about this. Michael Bloomberg, if that number is accurate, could have written a $1 million check for every man, woman, and child in the United States and still had over $100 million left over compared to what he spent. Now, if a presidential hopeful, if a nominee hopeful were to send my household $6 million worth of checks, I would feel like that individual was for me. Now, the flip side is that could be viewed as buying the vote. But
I mean, it is, but
but and don't get me wrong, that's his money. I firmly believe you can spend your money however you want. You want to go out and buy a huge bale of marijuana and set it on fire and let your whole neighborhood feel good? Well, that's between you and your local constables. All right? And if you're my neighbor, please don't do it. I actually don't have any desire to get high off of anything like that. But, your neighbors might feel differently. But that's your money. I do feel like you should be able to spend it how you want. It's just that when these folks, let's take, for instance, Bernie Sanders used to talk bad about millionaires a lot. Now he talks bad about billionaires because he's now a millionaire himself. So now millionaires are okay.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, brownies for my fat, pay to win. Yeah. They're going to hit us on taxes because of the so-called money people are getting. So here's my thought on that. And I understand that I am not necessarily representative of every man, woman, and child in the United States. If you are a person who ordinarily would have gotten a tax return, and right now you're looking at not knowing where your next meal is coming from, if that was me in that situation, I would much rather take an interest-free loan against my tax refund next year than to starve. That's.
I think they may have actually changed around the taxes on that also. I think that may have been one of the things, and I can't remember how they were going to do it. The stimulus that was in 2008 was taxable, but I think they were either going to try to work this in as a tax credit, that you got a tax credit early, or they were just going to try to get rid of the whole taxing at all.
Gotcha. And here's another thing, guys. Once again,
Trying to see if I can figure out where that landed.
Going back to this whole, this is all unprecedented. We cannot, aside from like holding industries accountable, you know, we can learn the lessons from the stimulus in 2008. Absolutely. But this is a different animal entirely. This is not an economic recession due to banking irresponsibilities and housing bubbles and things like that. This is a pandemic situation. This is a situation, if we hit all of the worst numbers estimated for this, okay, the numbers I saw were an estimated potentially 40 to 60% of the country infected with COVID-19. And so again, that'd be let's look at the worst case on that. So we got 330 million, round figures, put enough zeros on this, times 0.6, 60%. That's 198 million people infected. And if this isn't taken care of as best as we can, so we see that 8% mortality rate that like Italy is seeing, that is 15,840,000 individuals dead. What's that going to do to our economy?
Right.
So again, this goes back to panic, wrong answer, take it serious, right answer. Yeah, I understand we're uncertain, but let's be honest here. Okay, we've talked before on this channel that I profess Christianity, so I'm going to break out some words from the good book, and it says that our days are numbered. It says we don't know what tomorrow brings. That's where faith comes in. You know, I remember the story of the fella who said that his barns were full, his silos were full, so he tore them down and built bigger ones. And that night, God said, "You fool, this very night your soul is required of you." So I guess where I'm going with that is, within reason, let's let tomorrow's problems be tomorrow's problems.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. I'm not necessarily representative of the whole. Your situation may be that, you know, if you have a $2,000 tax bill next year, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I think I saw what it was worst case. You wouldn't owe anything. You just might not get any refund back.
Right.
But I think they were trying to push to exclude that from tax period. So I'm not sure where it landed, but I think I can't remember. There was one side that was pushing for that, and the other side was saying, well, we'll try to recoup some of it. So we'll kind of see where that lands out. But yeah, as for the, remember that they're not just the lobbyists, that's yeah, that's kind of my big point about it is the only way we're going to get them to remember that is if you get rid of them.
Right.
As long as they keep getting reelected, then yeah, the lobbyists are going to keep running things. So, like I said, I mean,
Well, and that goes into that
that's your only way.
constitutional or the congressional reform we need. There needs to be penalties for lobbyist kickbacks and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Well,
So you have a lot of really bad things. I mean, you've got people who learn how the inside works and then they leave and they go work for these lobbyists.
Right.
Because now they know how to get it done.
Yeah.
And that, I think, should not be like that.
So, and Greg, you're talking about middle class getting stomped on. Well, let's talk about when we look at these socialist policies that people are trying to push for. I can't help but look at California and look at Elias. Have you seen the pictures of the tent cities and crap out there, man?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I have seen pictures from California that look like pictures from third world countries.
You're talking about just normal?
Yeah, normal. I'm not talking about
yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the medical stuff. No, yeah, I'm sorry, what you're talking about.
I'm talking about day in and day out. Never mind. And it's kind of funny now that just last year they decriminalized public defecation, and now they're flipping out because now we have a disease running rampant. You can't just crap wherever you want. It's like, really? I mean, you didn't know that?
Yeah, and that real quick, just to point back where we're talking about, the Democrat idea of we're about the people and it's not about the money. These are in Democrat-run areas, and yet they're not really taking care of the people. So
oh, absolutely.
That kind of falls right there on its face.
When you look at California, there is no middle class in California. No. You're either wealthy or you're abjectly poor. Now,
you have to, because
somebody's going to chime in and say
a house that in Indiana will cost you about $150,000-$200,000 will cost you upwards of $750,000 there. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I remember seeing. I was out there in California for work about a year ago, and just out of curiosity, I was looking at prices of houses around there, and I mean, they got mobile homes inside of trailer parks that are going for $300,000.
Jeez. Yeah, if you had a $300,000 mobile home in Indiana, it's actually going to be like an RV.
That's gonna be a brand new triple wide, and it's on 10 acres.
Yeah. So, tents on the streets in LA is real. Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen anything.
Vegas also.
I haven't seen anything since the epidemic broke out or the pandemic broke out. But yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have been on, believe it or not, the better part of an hour and a half. We covered the couple of things that we wanted to, and even a little bit more. So, to conclude,
you threw the constitutional considerations logo on there, so it counts that it wasn't as much about firearms today.
Right. Well, and like I said, right now, all of us are. Kind of our focus is on this pandemic and trying to keep those we love healthy and those we care about. So I realize that's heavy on everybody's mind, and I realize again that I've been a little content light these last couple of weeks. I apologize for that. Like I said, I've had to back burner a lot of things just because availability hasn't been what I was planning on. So we'll see what comes. I do appreciate you guys joining us here tonight. Elias told me earlier that he was starting to get his notes together for another episode of Liberty Review. So,
yeah, I actually want to talk about writers. That's talking about it today got me thinking about it, and I think I'm going to do an episode around there of writers and the kind of things that get passed during a time of trouble.
Right.
We'll put it that way. Whether you're talking about the Patriot Act right after 9/11, which was probably the single largest unconstitutional law ever passed, or you're talking about, writers they were trying to attach to a stimulus bill because they were hoping that it would get pushed through because nobody wanted to vote down a stimulus bill.
Right.
Thankfully, both sides kind of prevented
Right.
that. I'll give credit to both the Democrats and the Republicans.
Right.
They stopped each other from doing that.
So, if you're not following the channel on social media, you can do that using the username that is on your screen. And if you're in a position that you'd like to help support what we do here at Tactical Review, you can do that through Patreon. I keep being told I need to switch to Subscribestar because they are a little bit less anti-gun. So that might be a thing that I have to get set up. But as of right now, I have not. So I appreciate you guys joining. Elias, do you have anything else before we sign off?
Yeah, everybody hang in there. We're going to get through this. This isn't the first thing to hit this country. It won't be the last thing. As long as we remember to kind of look out for each other and be smart and think rationally, we will get through this.
Absolutely. So guys, until next time, be safe, be healthy, shoot straight, and stay safe.